I find it kind of odd that Gartner and Forrester and some of the executive recruitment firms aren't really covering these fields. It's great to know that IBM is jumping in and maybe doing one of their annual reports on chief digital officers. But chief data officers are just as important. This isn't a new field. It's not a new discipline, but it certainly is a new title. So I started tracking it in 2013. And as we mentioned, there were 0 chief digital officers. The first one was hired at MTV. In my opinion, it was a direct result of digital disruption in the music industry, especially Napster in 1999. And we saw the first CDO hired at MTV in 2005. From then, we've doubled every year. So there's been a doubling of CDO hires. Last year, we had 500. I predict this year we'll have 1,000 very conservatively. As I mentioned before, Gartner thinks we're going to hit 1,500 this year, that we're going to triple. But with chief data officers, let's look a little bit at the history of that. The first chief data officer title that was hired was a woman who was hired for a bank in 2003. So it actually started 2 years before the chief digital officer title came to fruition. Now, that doesn't mean the data analytics started in 2003. We all know it goes way before that. And certainly in our field, the sort of internet field and digital, we really started seeing titles like Chief Science Officer, Chief Analytics Officer, Chief Data Analytics. There's certainly data analytics groups and offices as well as officers. And this really came out of some of the biggest companies that we know of today, right? It comes out of Amazon, Google, Yahoo, Netflix. All of them are making specific use of data to give the right information to the right person at the right time. And so what's happened since then, we saw it started to explode in banking and some of the financial industry. So the first chief data officer was hired at a bank. And then I started to see that there was even more phenomenal growth of that title around 2008 and 2009. I believe it was a direct result of the financial collapse, government stepping in and saying you need to have more governance, more control of your data with regard to governance, regulatory issues, and other things that saw it take off banking, financial, and insurance services. But since then, it's also exploded in medical and pharma and in other places. And now we're starting to see it also grow in the municipal sector. Did anyone see the interview with Rachel Hout yesterday? Chief Digital Officer of New York City, Chief Digital Officer of New York State. Quite frankly, I think a lot of her job was the job of a Chief Data Officer. And you do see Chief Data Officers in San Francisco, in Philadelphia, Mark Heald, and abroad. So we're just seeing this grow tremendously. So what I decided to do, because I know now everyone's eyes have completely glazed over, because whenever you talk about data, it just doesn't have a human component to it. So we could have pulled together a panel of chief analytics officers that would make you fall asleep. But what I decided to do was, let's bring the human element into this and bring in a diverse panel so you can get an idea of how companies and individuals are using data to move from insights and analytics to deeper customer engagement. And I just think, again, we're looking at it from a couple of different perspectives. So I wanted to introduce Carl Marcy. Carl actually built the Time Warner Media Lab downstairs, and they study biometrics. So where your eyes, it's kind of like a man cave down there. If you could have your ideal situation with all your tablets and giant screen TVs in a living room and a bedroom scenario, and they literally bring in volunteers that then watch television. They hook them up so that they can see if their palms are sweating, if their heart rate starts to race, where their eyes are looking, and they're taking all this data to make sure that you're still watching the advertisement all the way to the end. And if you didn't watch it, where did you go to next? So I think he brings an interesting perspective in biometrics and neuroscience into data. And then we also have Greg Daniel, who needs no introduction. He's Chief Digital and Marketing Officer at Nielsen, which of course has a tremendous amount of insight into consumer behavior. And Ganesh Bell, who's from GE, he's the Chief Digital Officer at General Electric Power. And I think what's fascinating about having Ganesh on this panel is that he's looking at data from devices and connected, things that are connected to the internet, not humans, but his products from GE that are now connected to the internet, and what kind of data that's bringing back that's allowing GE to make more informed decisions. And finally, last but not least, I think Ben Edwards. Ben is really effectively Chief Communications Officer at IBM, and he owns just about everything related to IBM's global communications functions. It's advertising, media, brand strategy, and design. he, like Carl, also created a design lab. And what I think it would be fascinating to him, is to us from him, it would be, how is big data changing the communications profession? How is big data impacting the way IBM engages to manage their brand? And even more importantly, how are they using big data for internal employee communications? So I think we've got a good kind of cross-section here. And maybe we'll start with Carl, and I think we have a graphic for Carl Marcy. But we'll start just to get an overview, Carl. How did you get into your profession? Tell us a little bit about your background and about what your company does.
Sure. First of all, thank you, David, for inviting me. And to clarify, I didn't build the Time Warner Media Lab. I was certainly an influencer in terms of the design. And what was exciting about that opportunity was that they were building this lab at a time when we were doing work with them. And the notion was, what could we do that was different, right? How do we get closer to consumers in a dynamic and evolving media landscape? And that's where bringing in technologies into a lab is really exciting. And my MD at the back isn't managing director, it's actually medical doctor, sorry. And so one question I often get is, what is a Harvard psychiatrist sitting in a digital marketing platform talking about neuroscience? And the answer is, I got very excited about two ideas. One was how people connect with each other, and the second one was how people make decisions. And it turns out the common theme across those two ideas is emotion and understanding emotion. And I'm not talking about, is someone happy, sad, or ambivalent? Those are feeling states on a conscious level. I'm talking about non-conscious emotions that we cannot access. I reiterate, we cannot access with our conscious minds and asking people questions. And neuroscientists commonly say that what we are consciously aware of is less than 5%, maybe less than 1% of what our brain is doing at any given time, which means that most of communication for the last decades and millennia have been talking to only one part of the brain. And so part of what's evolving is, how do we take technologies from the neurosciences and from healthcare and bring them to this massive communication that you all are involved with? And that's what biometrics and eye tracking does. And what you're looking at here is an attempt to change a perception about Innerscope. So most people haven't heard of us, but if you have, the association is really smart and really expensive. So what we're trying to do is move to a platform that can help companies make everyday decisions. So what you're looking at is a platform we designed called the Census, and it's a kiosk where we can recruit people, and with one platform we can capture the expressions on their face, we can measure their heart rate and their electrodermal response and their skin, and we can measure their eye tracking, exactly where they're looking. So think of it as we could tell where they're looking, what emotion they're expressing, and how deeply they're expressing it without asking a single question. But of course, at the end of the experience, we can also ask questions with the keyboard. And so that's really what I talk about in terms of integrating neuroscience.
Well, that's fascinating. Where do you get your volunteers for this? Can I volunteer? I wouldn't mind sitting and watching TV for a couple hours.
You're more than welcome to volunteer. When we use professional recruiters, but when we first started, a quick story, we had a vest. And so people literally had to take their shirt off, and they had to put a T-shirt on, they had to put a vest on, and all these wires. And I literally was like, do you really think people are going to do this? And it turns out for $50, people will do just about anything, especially in a down economy. So we have no trouble getting participants.
Right. And we'll go to Greg next. Greg's it's a new title, but you've been at Nielsen for a while, but you were just promoted to Chief Digital and Marketing Officer at Nielsen. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So yeah, I've been with Nielsen for 2 years leading digital marketing. This role was created 2 months ago. And to me, it really is very much about what you spoke about, which is we realize we have amazing content. We're very blessed that we actually have content that has tremendous interest around media fragmentation, product fragmentation, population growth, and all the shifts that are happening there. But this area is really now to focus more on how do we bring that to life, right? It really is that idea of data to insights to engagement, and how do we share all of these tremendous insights with all of the various constituents who are just basically are interested in it. Before Nielsen, I was with American Express for almost 18 years in various marketing, product development, digital, and general management roles.
We get a wide variety of people in the audience and also people viewing on the archives. Can you give us a little bit of background on Nielsen for those who aren't familiar with the company?
Sure. So yeah, Nielsen's a fascinating place. Many folks in the U.S., when I told people that I'm at Nielsen, they immediately think of TV ratings, which is a very important part of the business. But Nielsen overall, the way I would describe it is it's really two parts of the business. It's what people watch across various platforms, and also what people buy. And to me, the real interesting intersection is where that comes together, taking data sets. So watch data sets around viewing, set-top box data, intersecting that with retail sales data and home panel data, and really seeing what insights you can get from that. And really where we're helping clients in a big way is around marketing effectiveness, taking that information, combining it together to help companies and clients with their advertising, as an example.
Sure.
So the way we talk about it often is for advertising effectiveness is there's reach, resonance, and reaction. So an example would be taking this data on the watch side and the buy side, combining it together to help companies optimize their marketing in flight. Right, so if a client is running 2 television campaigns, in olden days you would need to really spend a lot of time, let them run to the end to see which creative worked better. Now, while companies are running marketing in flight, we can see which ads are doing better, which ones are reaching the right audiences, the intended audiences, which ones are having the desired effect, which ones are resonating with consumers, and then the reaction piece is it driving the desired effect? Is it impacting sales?
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. I'm interested, before we move to Ganesh and your background, there's an increase of chief digital marketing officers, right? So we usually deal with the pure play people coming up straight up chief digital officer, but we see a lot of movement from the CIO and CTO track to become chief digital information officers. And now we're, of course, seeing all these chief marketing technologists, I think is another title we're seeing on the marketing side, again, intersecting with the pure play chief digital officers. What was the impetus behind moving you to this new title, and do you have different responsibilities than you had before?
To me, I think it's really very much a trend that we've been speaking about here for the last couple of days, which is around content. And there's the traditional marketing that we all know very well, but content marketing, there's a lot of conversation around content marketing, but it's very real. It's a longer term play. And it's really around building relationships. And with the world of social media as one example, to me personally, a lot of organizations, profit, not for profit, we have to do social. To me, this is around content driving all of your channels, be it social media, be it email, any channels, online, offline, right? Could be out of home as well too. So it really is that idea of taking a step back to have content drive the overarching strategy, and the reason why that is often marketing could be interruptive, it's transaction based. Content marketing, if done right, if it's unique and really adds value and helps you earn a seat at the table of your clients or whatever constituents you're looking to serve, really it's helping them with their lives in a very meaningful way. And that really is more around the long-term relationships and the effects that can generate.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the promotion. If there's anything we can do to help, or the other chief digital officers, I would enjoy networking with others here. And Ganesh, what an amazing journey for you, and now chief digital officer at GE Power, based in, I believe, San Francisco.
Yeah, in Silicon Valley in San Ramon.
Sure, give us a little bit.
So thank you for the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh yeah, of course. That's Steve again. Steve would be way ahead of us. Yeah. Tell us a bit about your background.
Sure. So I've been in software companies most of my life, enterprise software companies like SAP, PeopleSoft, Business Objects, doing analytics. So I've been in companies where we've done all the software platforms for everything from marketing to customer engagement to building analytic platforms and analytic solutions. And most of my friends actually scratch their heads and asking, like, why are you going and working at GE? I kind of look at it as the place is ripe with use cases, right? I can be in a software company and look at all the horizontal problems, or I can go in a company where it has all the use cases. It's a $146 billion company, more than 130 years old, and the businesses that I work across, GE Software and GE Power and Water alone, is a $28 billion business, and we make everything from gas turbines to steam turbines to nuclear power plants to renewables like wind, solar, battery, and water processing technologies, and bringing all of these things together and creating new solutions is a mission that GE is on. And it's a very fascinating journey that the company started, and I'm fairly new to the company. So they started this mission of looking at data and saying, what can we generate from the data that we collect from our machines around the world? What kind of insights can we deliver? Just like Greg talked about from data to insights to engagement. We also think about engagement as well as new solutions that we can provide to our customers and new value we can go provide to our customers. So it started with this digitalization journey of the business and looking at new value streams we can go create for our customers. And my role was created to come in, look at the entire business, and in addition to the hardware products and the services business we have, I have the responsibility for all of the commercial software and analytics solutions for the company, in addition to owning the digital engagement across that business.
And what's fascinating about you, too, is among the many things you're tasked with, one of them is the Internet of Things and devices connected. Give us some idea of the scale. How many people are connected to the Internet versus how many devices, and what's that projected to grow
to?
Sure.
Right now I think there's about 2 billion plus or 2.5 close. We're nearing about 2.5 billion people being connected to the Internet. And by year 2020, there's going to be 50 billion devices in the world connected, and that's devices, not sensors. So every machine could have a lot of different sensors, and that's not just cell phones and wearable technology. That's all devices from buildings to all the big iron that we have. In fact, later this afternoon, I'm talking about big iron meets big data in an energy conference across the river in New Jersey, and that's huge opportunity. And when you think about data that we generate, like a blade in a turbine that we make, a gas turbine that we make, could generate about 500 gigabytes of data a day. And that's more data than most users generate on Facebook. So the scale of data is massive. And what we can use that from data, and we have a history of everything from physics, chemistry, material science, computational analysis, but applying all of that on top of the data, we can now predict things like machine performance, optimize downtime, and predict output. And optimize not just a machine, but optimize their operations, connect people, and engage them, and use that to even have greater engagement with our content initiatives, because they engage at the machine level and they engage at the data level.
Sure, fascinating. And Ben, so Ben, you've got such an incredibly broad brief at IBM, both internal and external communications. I said Chief Communications Officer. I know IBM likes to make humble titles like VP, but you have a very broad brief there, right? This is both internal, external. You're also in charge of the brand. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on at IBM.
Yes, so I'm on about my fifth career now. I've been a print journalist. I was a print journalist for a long time. I went into strategic communications for IBM. I've run a digital media business. I've worked in marketing, and I now have this current job, which doesn't, the title doesn't really speak to it. I guess the way I would try and help you guys think of it is we restructured our corporate marketing function at IBM last year, and we split it into two. And one half you could think of as the quants, right, who are really building predictive models based on client data. But increasingly, we want them to focus also on employee data, right? Because we think the platforms we're building in the experience layer and in the analytic layer can be equally applied to anyone, including IBMers. The other group, which is the group I run, is the experience layer, right? Which is increasingly a digital proposition, right? So we do our work overwhelmingly in web design and development, mobile application design development, and digital services. We build our own digital services as well, based on data. And again, those activities are done externally for clients in support of the myriad ways IBM interacts with our clients and tries to draw prospects into our marketing systems, and internally with IBMers. And the lab you mentioned has is building a single cloud-based stack and an agile application development environment for both purposes, right? So we can spin up an app for IBMers as easily as we can for and deploy one for clients.
And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I'll just say that the one other thing I've mentioned is I think the fate of the group I'm running increasingly will be to merge with product, especially software design and development, right? So the next iteration of our lab, you can read some clues into this. We're going to be co-locating our marketing developers and our content strategists and all the folk who are needed to make that work with IBM Design, which is responsible for the design of our 3,000 software products, and also with IBM Interactive Experience, which is our digital agency that does interface design on behalf of our clients.
Wow, that's a big brief. And then do you work, I know you work with some outside consultants as well. I'd like to give a shout out to one of our sponsors if that's appropriate.
Please.
You can. Yeah, Discover Digital Group, or DDG, is one of the sponsors of our event.
Yes.
And they also ran a session. I think Justin Tobin, the co-founder or the founder, is here as well. How do you work with DDG? What kinds of things are they working on? And they're in the Design Lab too, is
Justin and the team are in the Design Lab. I mean, the Design Lab's a very unique model. It's I de-emphasize its organizational lines and emphasize methods and talent, right? So we're looking to source talent and apply a set of methods that are sourced from design thinking and agile software development. So we have, I think, something like 12 or 13 different agencies working in Design Lab, including Ogilvy, Havas, VSA, which is a very high-end graphic design and interactive design agency out of Chicago, Justin and team, and others, sitting down co-located in project work with us in marketing and communications, with IBM Research, with our product groups, and with our CIO technology organization that brings the enterprise technologies into the lab.
Fantastic. And I'd love to come back to you and talk about how big data is changing the communications profession.
Yeah, sure.
You know, how is it changing internal employee engagement?
Yeah.
But maybe we'll go back to Carl for a second, and because we have a second screen presentation going on right now, and everybody's concerned about, are people still watching our television show while they're doing Facebook on their phone or the tablet or Twitter or communicating with their friends through Snapchat, whatever it might be. But you made kind of a provocative comment, which was you believe that usually you think of the second screen as this sort of interactive, very close, whereas the first screen is passive. But you've been quoted as saying you believe the second screen is moving to a passive mechanism as well. Why do you say that, and what are the implications of that?
Yeah, I think first a little bit of context. One of the first studies we did going back to 2007 was with NBC Universal, and they were terrified at the time of this thing called the DVR and fast forwarding, if you remember that. And the idea of people sort of skipping ads. And one of the things that we help them understand is that even in a fast forward mode, there are still brand impressions that are actually created. And you can see the eyes naturally gravitate to what's called this sort of central bias. So you stare at the center of the screen, but what emotions do is they tag information for relevance. So if something was relevant, you could see people dart out, and oop, there's a brand, oop, there's an action, oop, there's something interesting from a product perspective. And you can very quickly come up with sort of rules for design for a fast-forwarding world. Put your action in the center. Make sure your brand is in the beginning, middle, and end of an advertisement, et cetera. Well, now we flash forward a few years, and everybody's nervous about the second screen, right? And what's so interesting about the second screen is that you're sort of, this head up, head down. We call it snapback. What makes you go back to the TV in that moment? You literally snap your head up, and we measure this in the lab right here and in other places. And it's all about relevance, right? But it's also about salience, right? What is salience? Salience is so these little sort of stimuli that make us look, right? If I get up and jump up and down, you're all going to go, ooh, what did you do that for? Right? If I raise my hand, right, the part of your brain that raises your hand actually fires. It doesn't make you raise your hand, but it fires just enough so you understand it. Now, salience is not relevant. So you can sort of get people to snap back, but if you're not delivering a relevant message, they're just going to go right back to their second screen. And so what we're seeing more and more of is particularly in younger generations, is that they have grown up in a world where there's a screen everywhere. And I grew up in a world where a TV was an entertainment device, a computer was a productivity device, and a phone was a communication device. Now they're just screens, right? And these are things that people can do all kinds of stuff with, and they're all becoming interactive. And so my point, to finally get to the answer to your question, is that as bandwidth increases and more people are doing passive things on the second screen, that becomes and begins to look a lot more like the first screen, right? So now you're leaning back with this smartphone, and you're engaged with content that's non-interactive. Sure. Holy cow, right? You know, the world has changed a lot. How do you measure that? Yeah. Right? How do you get close to consumers? And that's something that, you know, where big data ends, sort of, you know, neuroscience begins, because you really get close to consumers. And
I know Nielsen has a Nielsen Neuro, and I'm sure this has affected your business dramatically, right? How do you now measure all these things going on social, and how does that impact your business?
Yeah, definitely, right? We do have a big neuroscience practice, but you know, one thing very interesting to what you were saying, Carl, is that we have something that we launched last year, which was Twitter TV ratings. You know, and to your point exactly, people are really leveraging social to enhance their viewing experience. So, you know, when I want to watch TV or a movie, the last thing I want to do is have another screen interrupting me. But my kids tell me I'm showing my age when I say that. They have devices in front of them when they're watching.
And Google Glass, then they'll have yet another as they're watching through their glass.
Absolutely, that's coming as well too. But yeah, 36 million people in the U.S. tweeted about television while they were watching last year. So you know, obviously this is not a small percentage of the population. I mean, that is large. Right. So, and there's a lot of interest around how do you measure that, right? That it's social measurement, it's audience measurement from a social perspective, and then what does that mean as far as what can our clients glean from that to figure out what people are thinking and feeling about their programming.
Sure, and Ganesh, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is interesting, connecting even what Ben was saying about design labs, right? And it's interesting that Ben mentioned that how design labs for them are moving from marketing and into products, right? And that's sort of how we see. We built the whole design lab. We believe that it's a core critical IP and skill for us. We built it in our center in San Ramon, where we bring people, whether it's customers, partners, and across the business, and we do things exactly like where we capture video. So we have a rig where we can send that rig into, it's a sphere with 26 GoPro cameras that capture lots of video from an industrial setting. And we can bring it into an environment where we have about 16 projectors project that on a wall, so you can surround yourself in immersive video, because that context in that environment is absolutely vital for you to reproduce what you would feel, how you would react given to a particular piece of data or analytics or even an app in your mobile setting. So you can't field test a mobile app just by putting it out in the hands of people. You want to also immerse them in the right environment and test it. So we see the connection between, you know, things like neuroscience and design thinking, and because that also allows you to develop an empathy for the customer and the user. So it allows you to create better products and services. So definitely.
I'm fascinated too. Let's keep with you, because you know, with the Internet of Things and all these devices and other things being connected, there are no emotions, right? You don't have to worry about a third screen, a second screen, or Google Glass. But what keeps you up at night as all these devices are connected? You know, what's coming down the road that frighten you or that make you, you know, kind of go, oh, we better keep our eyes on this?
Well, the amount of data, right? That's definitely interesting and scary at the same time. And the most interesting aspect is also, you know, not just these devices getting connected, right, and the use cases that we can go do on top of that. And that requires not just us thinking. I think it really requires, you know, customers and partners to co-innovate and co-create. I think the biggest challenge in all of these opportunities that's data-driven is co-innovation and co-creation. So when I, you know, hear Ben talk about design thinking, and you guys talk about the neuroscience and how you look at customer behavior, ultimately that leads you to inform your products and services. And so that's how we think about it, which is why I look at, in my role, I divided it into 3 parts, which is, as Chief Digital Officer for the company, I look at digital work, as in how we work inside the company, and how we create products and services, which is also creating new digital solutions and new digital products and offerings, and how all of that drive through digital customer engagement and experience, right? So it's not just about the properties of the digital solutions we have, but also about new products and services we offer.
Sure, and before we move on back to Ben to talk about maybe big data changing the communications and brand profession, I always like to see where people, you know, how important your position is to the company usually resides on who you report to. So just wondering, who do you report to, Ganesh, and who are you hired?
So I report to the group CEO of GE Power and Water.
This is a critical position for them.
And who reports to Jeff Immelt at GE. Wow. And so my peers are all CEOs of the other energy businesses like power generation, nuclear, water, renewables. And so again, the CEO the group CEO of Power and Water, he decided that this is a very critical position for transforming the company. And it's very easy at GE because we have a great chairman and CEO, and Jeff Immelt, who believes in the digitalization of the industry. And also we have a great CMO, one of the best CMOs in the world, with Beth, who not only does marketing. Her CMO title is misleading because she's more than marketing and strategy for the company and driving digital thinking across the company. So they see this as a big, vital investment, to the end that we actually build GE software with about 1,000 software engineers in Silicon Valley who are building this industrial Internet of Things platform. And we've got about 14,000 software engineers across GE working on problems to create new digital solutions and digital offerings to our customers.
Right. And Greg, you report to Katie Burke, who's incredible. I mean, she was a Republican committee, helped to, well, you explained, she's EVP, but kind of a misleading title. She's a very influential person.
Yeah, Katie Burke joined Nielsen in January, absolutely amazing. Came from Edelman and a long history in politics before that. And she reports to the CEO.
Right.
So definitely a huge area of importance to the company.
And Carl, of course, you run your own show. But interestingly, you started all this when you were teaching courses at MIT, right? And you met your partner. Can you give a little bit of background on how that started?
Sure, yeah. So I was purely on the academic track. I was actually studying empathy between patients and doctors, and this notion of how people are wired to connect. And someone said, you should go over to the MIT Media Lab. So I took a very short journey. It's literally 2 train stops from Mass General to MIT, and we were fast friends because they had all this amazing technology. And you have to put this into context. About 15 years ago, the first wearable computers, the first handheld computers, and what do MIT engineers do? They take things apart and then they reconfigure it. And so they were building the first devices that could integrate multiple channels. So we had technology that could measure voice features, skin conductance, heart rate, movement, all in a wearable device. And so we were doing all kinds of fun stuff with that. And that led to this idea that we are wired to connect with each other. There's profound evolutionary reasons for that. And the same system that allows us to connect with one another, as sophisticated and sensitive as it is, it's not very discerning, right? So we also connect with objects, and we connect with technology. And so the big idea of Innerscope is how do you measure the emotional connection to all kinds of things?
That's fascinating. And Ben, who do you report to at IBM?
I report to the CMO, John Owata.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. And then I'd love to chat a little bit more about, because when people think about big data, they don't always think about the implications on brand and on communications and how this is really shifting that field. And even kind of another sector where people don't really think about big data is on employee engagement. So do you want to touch on, maybe we'll start with the impact on
so I guess where I start is with culture, meaning how we work and how we make decisions. And to me, the acid test is, are we making our decisions based on the data, right? And this is a transformation you see everywhere, right? Professions that have formerly relied on intuition and implicit knowledge and expertise are being confronted with, new practices and methods that are empirical in nature and can give you the answer through data. So communications is no different, right, to this. One way of thinking about it is, when I look at we have about, 600 or 700 people in the communications function worldwide at IBM. And I look at what they send round as evidence of the value they're delivering. And a lot of it is still volume-based, right? It's sort of, in an external media, it's about how we influence this reporter or that reporter, and they send around these press clippings. And, media being what it is today, these are very, very long lists, right? Because, anyone's got a blog, and I don't know, the value of that stuff. I couldn't tell you. All I can tell you is it's this long, or that long, or this long, right? What is the actual value that, a PR professional is delivering? That's what I want to know, in data, empirically. Mm-hmm. And I think the second point, this applies probably less to communications than to marketing, is how quickly do we respond to the data? How agile are we in our planning and replanning and our engagement models, right? Communications is not saddled with some of the sclerotic planning practices that traditional marketing departments have. But, going to your marketing colleagues, was one thing getting them to be responsive to the data. It's another to getting them to act on it in the right sort of time frame, given the way consumers want to interact these days.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say something about this is all true of employees as well, and we use social analytics, we use web analytics, we use UX tracking and these sorts of things internally at IBM. The thing I'm getting more interested in on the internal side is more of a kind of a Fitbit model, right, where I have personal analytics that help me understand how I am improving against whatever it is you think you should be improving against, or whatever it is we think you should be improving against, right? So I'll give you one experiment we ran last year with a very, very tough audience. This is the top 300 executives at IBM. I'm one of them. And the goal was to get them to adopt social media internally, right? As a way of engaging their teams, right? Which is really a kind of a profound cultural transformation for a group of 50 to 60-year-olds who've led in a very particular style for a long, long time. And for the longest time, our teams in communications were battering down their door, asking them they want coaching, et cetera, and nothing, zero, And we built a dashboard and a leaderboard with an analytics score of 1 to 100, right, which measured their reach, engagement, amplification, right, internally with their teams at IBM. And we started publishing it once a month and sent it to the chairman. And electric.
Oh, yeah. Nothing better than a top 10 list.
Behaviors.
Gets the competitive
Who would have
juices
thought such
flowing.
a cheap gimmick could work? But it did. It
Right,
did. And everyone has a personal score, and then suddenly the phones are ringing. And how do I improve it? What's behind this? We never published the algorithm. We've kept it shrouded in mystery, and we've changed it a lot as well over the time as well. But it suddenly engages them on a journey of change and progress.
We created a Chief Digital Officer talent map. It was probably 200 pages of data, and I don't think anyone read it. And then we created a top 10 list for Twitter and a top 10 list for the top 10 Chief Digital Officers on cloud, and they both went viral. You got to simplify things, I think, really, and also it really feeds the competitive juices when you see somebody say, "Wow, I've got a 69 or a 70 on cloud. How do I get it up to an 80?" And then the next thing you know, they're doing things differently. They're tweeting more, professionally, or doing things differently that will help get a bigger Twitter following, or whatever it might be.
Folk at IBM who run 15, 20, 50,000 person organizations who are obsessing about this number.
Right, they're obsessing, right. So I think we've got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to make sure we have time for questions, but I want to thank you all again. I know there's some different perspectives, and you brought up some definitions. And I think, the title of the panel is From Insights to Engagement. And the definition of engagement is different, I would imagine, for each one of you. And I think, Carl, maybe if you would want to start out, do you have a definition of engagement, or what should the definition be for your clients?
Sure, I think it's a great question. And just so people know, I've actually sat on panels where a formal debate was set up. Those on the side that think that we should just abandon the use of the word engagement because there's so many different definitions, and those on the side sort of saying, no, we should hold on to it. So I'm in the camp that says we should hold on to it if we define it properly and can measure it. And so I'm very specific in our definition of how we use engagement. It's attention to something that emotionally impacts you. So there's two components to that, right? So if I take a glass of water and I take a sip of it and put it down, I think we all agree I have to pay attention to it at some level. But am I engaged with it? Probably not. It's habitual behavior, something I do all the time. It's not something that I'm going to give a lot of brain resources to. If I spill that glass of water on me in front of my new friends, in front of a group of people I've never met before, what's going to happen? I'm going to have a big spike in my emotional response. With all due respect to you, I'm going to ignore you, and I'm going to try to dry myself off, and then I'm going to have to recover from the embarrassment. There's an awful lot of emotion that's going to happen in that short cycle. Now I'm engaged, right? I am engaged in that moment in a fundamentally different way. Which one do you think I'm going to remember 2 weeks from now? Taking a sip of water or spilling water all over myself, right? So again, emotions tag information for relevant. You need both components. And I think that, I'm curious to hear what the other folks say and how they define it. I think if you pay attention to how people use the word engagement, they're likely to be both of those in there.
Fascinating. Of course, all the data coming in Nielsen, how do you get that data? And then I've heard the quote, I'm probably misquoting it, but something like there's, of the 90% or 95% of data out there, a very small percentage of it is actually analyzed and used to give the right information to the right business person at the right time. Yeah. I would imagine with all the data coming in, how does Nielsen define engagement?
Yeah, I don't think Nielsen defines engagement, but the way I would define it is that, I thought that was a great definition.
Yeah,
the advice that I would give, because I talk about this all the time internally, is be externally focused. That is the most important thing. So the example that you even used about that report, right, that people didn't read after you put a lot of time and effort into it, that's happened within Nielsen too. Big comprehensive report. My point is when you're communicating that outward, who is your audience? What are they? Don't talk about what you want to say. What does your audience want to hear?
Right. I'd like to refine what I said too. I want it to be clear, like the audience for that report read it. The journalist, the analyst. It was quoted by MIT Sloan Management Review. It was quoted by McKinsey. The people who have the attention span to go through it and actually see the data, it served its purpose. But to get that viral, hit, you really have to. I wouldn't even say the word dumb it down. It's more simplify and make it easier for people to digest. And what I'm finding on social is even better than a short tweet or video is an infographic. Infographics say it all. Push people back to the blog to get more information. They like that blog post. Maybe they'll click on the link to get the full-fledged, talent map, right? So you've got to address the engagement you want for your audience. You have to understand the audience need. I completely agree.
Right. Yeah. Right. Know your audience. Right. There's always going to be that core group that's going to read it backwards and forwards. But if you're trying to get a broader audience, who is that? And then use the right mechanism. So infographics is a great example. Data visualization is something that we're looking to do more and more of. As an example, Nielsen has jointly sponsors with the Conference Board of the Demand Institute. So if you go to the demandinstitute.org, as an example, they just put out a report about communities in America and looking at 2,000 communities which are struggling, which are thriving, and there's a really rich data visualization that we worked with Digitas, actually, our agency, to support that. Right, so that's a good example of, okay, that's the right tool and mechanism for that to help bring that to life.
Sure. And Ganesh or Ben, did you want to touch on that? And then maybe we'll take
sure.
Questions.
I would say my recommendation when you think about engagement is, if you're in I like your definition of engagement and intention, right? So we think about three things, which is adoption, usage, and attention. And they all go together. And when you think about engagement, I think we should probably also not just limit it just to the content and the marketing efforts that you have, but think about connecting that to your products and services. And companies that do this very well are companies that are where their product is already digital in nature. SaaS companies do this, which is they measure adoption, usage, and engagement at the feature level, at the product level, then connect it back to marketing and your content. Now, if you think about that, even if your product happens to be physical, if you connect that all the way, then you get a much bigger picture of engagement, not just externally, but also internally on how you can engage your employees to produce even better products and services that would emotionally engage the customers.
Sure. And Ben, did you want to touch on the definition?
Yeah, I'm going to put my brand hat on here, and I love your ambition for emotion. I think there's a higher one though around. You could call purpose, values, practices, and connection to that, shared connection to shared purpose, values, practices, right? So certainly this is what we're working on with employees all the time at IBM, but also our clients, right? We have a mission, we have a purpose, it's beyond making money, right? We share values together as humans, and I want to connect with you on that level. And then if you look at our lab model, which is an incredibly high engagement model for white-collar work, right? We share methods, right? We understand them, they're explicit, and we share how we work together. And that culture is really a tremendous bond for engagement.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I want to give time for questions. Do you have any questions from the audience? Yeah, sure. Ken, did you have a question? Ken Cragen right in the middle here. We'll get you a mic.
Oh, there's a mic.
Yep.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, this is for Ganesh. An article, I think it was in the LA Times about a week ago, about the fact that you can now be hacked through your refrigerator. literally that home devices that you have, a lot of which are manufactured by GE, that connect to the internet for various purposes can now be utilized as avenues to, and are being utilized in some cases. Are you addressing that at all?
Yeah, so security is obviously a big important initiative, and that's one of the reasons we, on this journey, it's important. It's not just somebody like GE solved this problem, it's an industry problem. So we actually launched a industrial internet consortium working with companies like Cisco, AT&T, and so on to work and define standards across digital security. And it goes all the way down to the sensors, because pretty soon every sensor, we're already seeing this being miniaturized, like sensors in our Fitbit and so on. These sensors can also have a built-in a global SIM, and they can talk anywhere and connect anywhere. So it's important to have high encryption standards and have very different kind of digital audits, security audits. So absolutely vital and important. And one of the reasons we launched that Industrial Internet Consortium is to focus on initiatives across the industry. It's not just GE, it's across the industry in terms of security.
Yeah, a couple of questions in the back.
So when you think about insights and analytics, often many companies are leveraging resources in emerging markets, right? Because you have to put a lot of talent, a lot of brain power behind it.
Yeah.
And I know GE, for example, you have 4,000 people or so in Bangalore. IBM has over 100,000 people in India. Could you talk about how or what contribution is being made by these talent from emerging markets?
Yep. Ben, do you want to take it first? Or?
Sure. I mean, when I first joined IBM in 2005, we had about 4,000, I think, people in India and about 180,000 in the US. And today, as you mentioned, we have over 100,000 in India. I learned only this week that India is going to be the largest pool of software developers in the world come, I think, next year. And absolutely essential. I think the trajectory we're on, and we're certainly on it in my group, right, is moving, if you like, from a resource model and a cost model to a talent model, right? And we're very proud of the fact that we're amongst the top 5 employers in India, and we want to be the top employer in India. And I want to move my innovation capability to India, right? So we're opening a lab in Bangalore, and we want to take that model, which has primarily been driven through cost arbitrage and these sorts of things, because at that time the disparities were so wide, and really build a talent model, right? So where do we source the best talent? Where from? We're actually, in lab, we have developers we've taken out of Eastern Europe. We have developers we've taken out of Asia. We've sort of, we're taking, it's kind of going in reverse, right? We're taking people out of these so-called offshore locations and moving them into central Manhattan, right? Because that's where that sort of work needs to get done, and they're the very best talent.
So for us, I think, at GE, we think primarily about talent. Talent's, as a company that prides itself on leadership and talent development, and that's one of our core IPs. So for us, going to different locations around the world is about where we can source the best talent. We have a healthy culture already of obsession of data, because that comes from very deep science. Every one of the industries that we're in is a very deep science industry. So that obsession of data and optimizing using data comes naturally to GE. So it's about scale and getting that scale. So wherever we can source the best talent in terms of the next generation set of big data talent, we will go and build centers out there and source that talent. And India is a big investment for us. We have lots of initiatives and they're part of our global research network across the company. We have a big center here in Albany and in Schenectady and Niskayuna and in Silicon Valley now with 1,000 engineers. So and we're still looking for great talent. So if you're in digital marketing, digital engagement, building digital solutions, tweet to me, write to me on LinkedIn.
I'll take my commission. This is a regular job fair. You should write your resumes. Yes. Does someone have a mic? Yeah.
I got it, Dave.
Thank you.
We're interested in knowing if the insights you get from this
Capgemini,
machine
right?
data.
Just didn't interrupt. Capgemini.
Capgemini. Yep.
Thanks.
wanted to understand how we're getting new business models or monetization of the data, which we're getting from specifically the machine, like you said, the turbines.
Yeah.
Is that led to new engagement business models for you guys?
Oh, absolutely. So we're already seeing that. We already launched some products. For example, there was one of our customers, E.ON, who's a wind renewables customer for us. They've got about 493, we call them sticks, meaning wind turbines. When you see a turbine driving by, every one of those is called a stick, and they have about 493 of these turbines. And we sold them basically a software suite that looks at all of the data in the wind turbine and optimizes the performance. So it drives performance by about 5%, which equates to a significant amount of revenue for our customers. So we get to partake in that performance upgrade, basically. And so that's a new, and instead of putting, I guess the equivalent was instead of putting 25 more wind turbines, they got that performance through a software upgrade. And not only that, we can use that same data to actually optimize things like pitch angle in the blade when they shouldn't catch. So there's we can correlate that to weather data. So when there's a huge wind gust coming, we can pitch it down so it doesn't catch that wind and get into damage, because every one of those turbines, if it catches wind in a big gust or a storm, right, it could be serious damage. So that we prevent downtime. And we can also predict in our machines when a planned downtime will be, so we can reduce unplanned downtime. That also increases for our customers simple numbers like if our gas turbine customers, 1% improvement in fuel efficiency is millions of dollars of cost savings. And that's something that we can partake in. So we're already seeing that from a business model perspective, which is we're selling the software as part of our contracts and service offerings, as well as selling them standalone software offerings on a subscription basis.
Great. Thanks, Ganesh. I think there was another question back here.
Yeah, this question's for Greg. In Nielsen, how do you keep track of me? Like if I'm on the train and I'm on my mobile and I'm watching a TV show, and then then I go home and I turn the same TV show that I was watching on my mobile on the actual TV, how do you know it's me? And then the second part of this is, are you doing any research on the purchasing via TV and cable in Nielsen?
Yeah, so Paul, thanks. First and foremost, everything that we do starts with privacy. We have a belt and suspenders approach to that, which is we have internal privacy councils. We work very carefully with privacy advocates. So, that is for every measurement science technique that we have, that is where we start. But there are various techniques. So there's set-top box data that actually knows what people are watching and knows in particular what you're watching. And then, for example, there's home panel data as well. So that idea of knowing what people watch and what people buy, those would be two examples of how you leverage those two data sets and bring them together to know, Paul, we know that you watch this, and we actually know that you bought this. And bringing that together is very powerful. We don't share PII outside of the company, right? So everything is anonymized and aggregated. But from a big data perspective, there's some amazing capabilities that can help bring that watch and buy part of the organization together.
Thank you. Any more questions? I know next step is lunch, so maybe we can continue the conversation over lunch. Sounds good. Okay, please, a great big hand for our panelists. Great job, guys.